and even at a broader term, the state. Okay, now let's dive in with now the ethical standards in Pakistan are regulated by PMC or PMDC and internationally by World Medical Association. Okay? So let's talk about Pakistan Medical and Dental Commission or Council. Now it's termed as Pakistan Medical Council, okay, PMC. Now what are its objectives? This is something that you just need to read through. There's nothing to be described. So it's just proficiency of medical professions, to maintain the medical register, check professional conduct of registered medical practitioners. Okay? So the PMC maintains a proper standard of medical treatment and preparation. Okay? And it also controls the medical education by forming out the curricula, fixing qualifications of medical teachers. So it just looks after the universities whether they are doing good and teaching their students well or not. Okay. Then it also maintains a register of qualified doctors and their qualifications. Okay. And lastly, it supervises, guides, and controls functioning. That's it. So let's talk about the duty of the doctor, which is important. Now, there are some compulsory duties and there are some voluntary duties. Now, as a medical doctor, you have some privileges, okay, in our country, basically. So the legal privileges would be that you can prescribe drugs and even dangerous drugs, okay, when you've got the license, obviously not right now. Then you can set up a medical practice, which is a general practice anywhere in Pakistan. You can hold government appointments. You can, now this is the most lucrative privileges of a doctor, which is that a doctor is authorized to issue sickness certificate, birth certificate, death certificates, and even a certificate that a person is unsound of mind. Okay, a doctor can even perform medical legal autopsies. A doctor can add a title of doctor to his or her name. Okay, and they can even give evidence in the court as a medical expert. Okay? Now let's talk about the duties of the doctor in general. So now let's talk about the implied contract. What is an implied contract? It is when it is the doctor-patient relationship is considered to be an implied contract. What does that mean? That you're not going to sign an actual contract when you're dealing with your patients, but it is implied, all right? And you owe to your patients. You owe them complete loyalty and offering of the services with the minimum amount of charge that's reasonable. Yeah. So for the duties in case of the implied contract, you should preserve absolute secrecy. You should give emergency care, be it anywhere at all. You should be very clear about instructions, prognosis, controls, warnings about the patient's disease. Okay, a doctor should not use misleading terms. Okay, if it's a very serious disease, you should convey that to your patients. That's one of your duties. You should not misguide your patients that, okay, it's going to get better. You should not give false hope because that's ethically wrong. Okay? You should tell them the prognosis, how your disease is going to progress over time. Will it get better? Will it get worse? Or is it treatable or not? What are the things that you need to do to make it better? Then there's consent. Just hold on for a second. I am getting some call. I need to take it. I'm so sorry for the disturbance. Okay, so we were talking about consent. As a doctor, you have the duty to take consent from your patient regarding every matter, be it operations, anesthesia, any investigation, even emergency cases. Yeah. All right. Now, another duty is consult with senior doctors and specialists. Now, you should know your boundaries. Okay. And in serious cases or difficult scenarios, you should consult your senior professionals, okay? So that you don't make any harmful decisions to your patient, okay? Then in causing a justifiable abortion or carrying out an abortion, which is a therapeutic abortion, be very clear that an abortion is illegal in our country, except for the fact that when it's recommended for therapeutic purposes. Okay? In case of a pregnancy already interfered with some other doctor, you need to consult your seniors. Okay? Now, we talked about the implied contract. Then there is the nature of contract. The nature of this implied contract is as under. Now, this is the things that you need to bear in mind when you interact with your patients. This is the contract between you and your patients, which is implied. You don't have to sign it, but it's there. It's the phrases are: he or she would treat the patient with reasonable degree of professional skill and care, would not divulge patient secrets coming to him during treatment to any person. Okay? You have to keep the patient's information a secret. Okay? You cannot disclose the patient information to anyone. All right? Then the treatment of patients can be terminated if you don't want to follow up a patient. You have to give a reasonable period's notice. Okay? You cannot just say, okay, I'm not going to look or follow up on you after this interaction. You can go now. You cannot do that. Okay? You have to give a notice period to your patient so that they can arrange another suitable doctor, right? And the patient is obliged to pay the doctor the prescribed fee. That's it. Okay. Then comes the term confidentiality, or medical or professional secrecy. Now, confidentiality is something very serious and needs to be respected. Okay? Why? The question should be why. Now, let's suppose you go to your doctor and you're not comfortable in sharing all of the details regarding any of your disease, because you might think that, okay, the doctor might tell the doctor is a friend of your friend or a family member, and he might disclose your secrets regarding your health to someone, and this might get you in trouble. So what happens is the patient will not communicate with you clearly when the confidentiality is at stake. Now, when the patient will not give you a clear clinical history or a deficient or a misleading history, what will happen? It will lead to a wrong diagnosis and ultimately wrong treatment. That is why the confidentiality is very important. Okay? So, principles of professional secrecy. Now, these are some legalities that you need to bear in mind regarding confidentiality or professional secrecy. Professional secrecy is another term for confidentiality. Sorry. So, you should not answer the query of third parties without patient's consent. Now, a third party includes everyone except for a patient, be it the mother, the father, the husband, the brother, anyone except for the patient is a third party. And if you need to answer questions regarding the patient's health to someone else except for the patient, you need to take consent. You cannot just discuss anything and everything with your patient's relatives without your patient's consent. Now, let me give you a very serious example of this. I was rotated in the gynecology department, and the ultrasonologist revealed the gender of the baby to be a girl. And the father, now this was something related to the woman, right? And the father of the baby, the father or the husband of that woman asked the technician about the gender. Now, bear in mind that we live in a society where a female gender is frowned upon. I know it's not the case with educated families, but the low middle income societies have this culture that a boy is something to be proud upon, and a girl is something to be frowned upon. I'm sorry, but this is the case. So that father or that husband, upon knowing the gender of the baby, that to be a girl, he left her wife in that hospital and he just went away. Obviously, that wife would have gone home probably, but he left her. Now, if that technician would have taken care of confidentiality, such a disaster would not have occurred. Her pregnancy would not have been disturbed. I don't know what happened to that lady after that, but that happened. Okay, so that's why we need to take care of confidentiality. Okay, now if a patient is major, which is 18 years of age, you cannot disclose any fact without the patient's consent. Okay, now there is an exception to this rule in cases of minor or insane patients. Someone who's not sane or is a minor, which is less than 18 years of age, you can disclose their information if necessary. Okay. Now, you cannot disclose the illness of a patient without consent, even when requested by public or statutory bodies. Okay. Now, there's an exception to this rule as well. These are the rules that you need to bear in mind. Okay. In cases of notifiable diseases, you cannot disclose the illness except when it's a notifiable disease. Okay? There's a list of notifiable diseases that when they come to you, you have to notify the government about it. So that's the exception. Even in case of husband-wife, you cannot disclose. Even in case of prisoners, you cannot disclose. Okay? Then there are certain circumstances where the disclosure is deemed necessary. All right. Let's take some examples. In cases of referral to other consultants, in keeping a medical record, obviously you need to keep a medical record in the hospital. So there is a chance of disclosure, like someone else might be able to read that medical record other than you who's working in the hospital. Okay. And a multidisciplinary team of doctors. If there is a team of doctors that's looking after the patient, obviously every doctor would be knowing the information about the patient. Okay? So let's talk about the relatives. If the relative is taking care of the patient, he needs to know about the disease. He needs to know what to do, what not to do, what medications to give. So obviously you will have to communicate to the relatives in such a requirement. Then there's the statutory requirement or a legal requirement. Okay, official notifications of births, deaths, infectious diseases, occupational diseases. These are required by law that we need to notify the government about it. In cases of the law, like in courts, you need to disclose information about your patient, and there won't be any obligations against you. Okay, so in the court of law, you can disclose the patient's information. Okay? Now, there is an approach that can be adapted in the court. Okay, first, you have the right to protest. That means that you can say that I will not disclose. And then you can request the court that you can write down the confidential facts so that not everybody could hear them. But still, if the court says no, you have to just tell us, so then that you have to tell the court. Then in public good, you can what you can say, just ignore the confidentiality if it's in public good. For example, someone's got a COVID positive test and he's just roaming around, so you need to inform people around him that he has got a COVID positive test and he needs to isolate. Okay, that's in public good because other people might catch the disease. Okay, then comes the police. Again, you are bound to notify any unnatural causes of death to the police. Okay. All right. Then comes privileged communication. What is privileged communication? It is a statement made bona fide upon any subject matter by a doctor to the concerned authority due to his duty to protect the interest of the community or the state. Okay. Now this is you have to remember when we were talking about confidentiality and a few exceptions, that when we can break the confidentiality, this is the privileged communication that we need to do in cases of infectious diseases or even the non-infectious diseases of some certain employees. Some organizations want a perfectly healthy individual, and it's against their contract that they would hire someone with disabilities. So you need to, communicate to the authorities that this person has got this disease. Okay. So this is a privileged communication, which is an exception to confidentiality. Okay. So I hope you know what is a privileged communication. Basically, just to make things simple, you have to abide by the patient's confidentiality in every scenario. However, there is an exception which is called a privileged communication, where you can make a statement and inform the authorities regarding infectious diseases or notifiable causes of death, or even some diseases which are non-infectious that needs to be known by the employers. Okay, what is the responsibility of a physician or doctor towards each other? You need to give respect to your colleagues. Okay, you cannot judge your colleagues what should you say, practice in front of your patients. Okay, so this was just an example that how disrespectful a doctor can get towards their colleagues, which should not be the case. Okay? And now a doctor or a consultant should not take charge of a case if it has been recommended to you by friends. Okay, so because then you get biased. Okay, appointment of a substitute. If a physician is absent, so the other doctor should attend to the physician's patients, right? Now, for the duties towards yourself as a doctor, you should charge a nominal fee, which is reasonable, and you should also maintain a healthy family work-life balance. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much. And if you've got any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, or else we can call it off. Can you revise starting few slides because many students were unable to connect? All right, sure. I'd be happy to do that. Notifiable diseases. Beta, any disease that can be transmitted are usually a notifiable disease. Transmitted, infectious, highly infectious diseases like mumps, every state or every country has a list of notifiable diseases. Let me tell you exactly what are the notifiable diseases in our country. Like notifiable, let me just Google it because I'm not sure what exactly are the diseases that are in the list of notifiable diseases in Pakistan. Okay. So there is, let me just, there's a website, I'm writing it down. You can go onto that website and check or read out the list of notifiable diseases in Pakistan, all right? These are usually the, okay, no direct message, everyone. This is the website that has the list of notifiable diseases in Pakistan. You can have a read through them. Okay, it's an extensive list, so we can't go through it online. Okay, so हम थे यहाँ पे initial slides पे. This was objectives. Achha. So the most important thing was the definition for ethics, morality, and law. Okay. By definition, what is a law? It is a, now I'm going to be reading this word to word. Why? Because it's a definition and you need to know it word to word. Okay. So a law is a code of conduct set by a legislative assembly or the head of state for the whole country. All right. It's controlled through the courts and violation may result in any form of punishment and is considered as an offense. For ethics, what is ethics? It's a code of conduct which is derived or designed by a specific group of professionals for a specific need. In our case, it's the code of medical ethics is designed by doctors. Morals are a code of conduct which are derived from religious or customary beliefs, perceptions, and practices. So it's just our customs and perceptions which design our morals. Okay? So ethics is the professional behavior and moral is basically the good and bad of a person. Yeah. So that's about it. We started our slide from medical ethics principles, and I hope everyone is clear about autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence, and justice. I want you guys to know by heart what does autonomy mean, what does beneficence mean, non-maleficence, and justice, right? So I hope everything's clear now. Should we call it off or is there any other question? All right. Okay, most welcome. I can't see your name, beta. I'm sorry. So whoever this is, thank you so much. And we're going to call it off now. I hope everything's clear. Thank you so much.
Okay, ma'am. Assalamu alaikum.
Allah Hafiz. Assalamu alaikum.
Allah Hafiz, ma'am.